This is Bishop John Selgers.
And I'm Pamela Selgers.
And welcome to the Half Hour Show. This is our second edition. We are extremely excited. Can't you tell I'm excited? I'm really excited to be coming to you in this way, in this format, using the technology of this time and day to absolutely make sure you get the right information. You get it from the horse's mouth. We're not making it up. You're getting it straight the way it need to come with no chaser. I actually don't know what none of that means, but y'all know what I mean. Y'all know what it means. No, Pamela, or any introduction before we invite our guest into this?
No, I'm ready to go. We got a half hour. Let's start.
All righty. Well, our guest for today is my friend, our good friend, my little brother. Well, yeah, he could be, well, son-ish, maybe. Okay. Anyway, because that's talking, it's more about me and my age and then our age than his. He is the rising star of the Democratic Party here in the state of Connecticut. When I first got to know him real good, I used to call him Mayor because I just felt like he was ready. He was destined to be involved in political matters, not just for political sake. He actually has a love and regard and a centering of the community, and in particular, the Black and brown community, the Black folk on the north end of town here in Hartford in particular. He is the Connecticut state representative for the 5th district here, and none other than Representative Brandon McGee. Brandon McGee in the house. Come join us, sir, and greet the peoples. Wait a minute. We got to unmute you. There you go.
There you go.
Well, look at here. Wait a minute, Brandon. I can't unmute you and then you mute you. There we go. I'm gonna just keep it. I'm keeping my hands up.
But look, I think that's always in order to be muted and starting to talk on these platforms. It happens almost always on Zoom. But anyway, Lady Pamela, Bishop, thank you so much for allowing me to be on your platform. First of all, I am so excited that the two of you have really took the bull by the horn and continued with our Moral Mondays, activating people. You didn't just start doing this stuff. Y'all been doing this for a very long time. And I am just very happy that I could be a brother's son. Let's put it that way. How did that work? How does that work? But I'm glad to be on and to provide some updates on important pieces of legislation here in the Connecticut General Assembly.
Brother Representative, you have been a leader since your arrival in the legislature in 2013. Look at that. Look at my memory. It's good today. It's on point today.
Yeah.
And I remember your run. I remember the conversation we had in Faith Congregational Church. Yep. When there was some disturbances there. It was good for you to have taken on what you took on.
And if you can recall, though, during my time, I had a really interesting introduction to the General Assembly. There was a recount, a revote, a court case. Shall I continue? Obviously, the rest is history, but it was definitely a history lesson, a civic engagement lesson for many of the residents, not only in the state of Connecticut, but in the 5th Assembly District that includes Windsor and Hartford communities. So I can't believe it's almost 10 years, and I am just so very excited that I have this opportunity to weigh in on important issues.
That's right. You chair the Housing Committee of the General Assembly. You also are a member of the Education Committee and the Appropriations Committee. And we'll talk about why that's important in particular to the particular conversation we'd like to have and the piece of legislation you've been championing here in the most recent time. Could you talk about a little bit, however, before we get to that particular, could you talk about what being a committee member is, and also what a chair is, and how that fits into the legislative process?
Thank you. Yeah, let's back up a little bit. I think it's important for all of your listeners and just for us in the room here to understand that your legislator or your state representative, your senator, we don't know all things. Okay, let's just put that on the table. However, there are some areas, i.e., education, housing, or money, whether it's the Finance, Bonding, and Revenue Committee or the Appropriations Committee. We have some interest and some passion around these particular areas. Usually at the start of the legislative session, each member has an opportunity to self-identify the committees that they choose or that they wish to serve on. Doesn't mean you'll always get those committees, but usually you have an opportunity to say, hey, I want to be on environment or whatever. The longer you're here, the more, you got some notches in your belt and you're able to kind of navigate and move around. And I am so very, very thankful and appreciative of all of our former speakers, but I couldn't be happier to see Matthew Ritter as our Speaker of the House. He is a Hartford guy. He loves everybody in Connecticut, but I'm owning him. He's from Hartford, and it is a great time for the state of Connecticut to have him at the front seat. So let's back into what does it mean to serve on a committee? What does it mean to be a vice chairman or a ranking member or even the chair of the committee? All right. Serving as a member of a committee, you have a lot of, let's just say, a lot of influence. You're following bills. You can bring proposals and concepts before the committee to the chairperson, whether it's female or male. You can bring it to them and say, hey, here's an issue that I'd like for this committee to really, really hone in on and perhaps even do some more research. Oftentimes, as a committee person, you have an opportunity to say, hey, Madam Chair or Mr. Chair, I'd love to have a public hearing on why flowers grow so big during the winter. It's just that simple, right? However, there is always a tone and a culture and perhaps even trends that drives the agenda of said committee. All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the Housing Committee. All of my members on the Housing Committee, whether they're Republicans or Democrats, I engage all of our members because I know at the end of the day, we represent the state of Connecticut. However, as the chairman of the committee, I have almost not free reign because I don't want to sound like it's my show. But as the chairman of the committee, I do have the autonomy and perhaps even the power to say this is going to be the agenda for the Housing Committee. I've chosen to focus in on equity. Equity has been, and I know we've been throwing this word around, so just throwing it around and not really defining it. And if I can just stick a little pin right here for a second to say, again, and I know I started off by saying thank you, but thank you to you, John, and you, Pamela, for when nobody else really wanted to do this type of work and they just wanted to tweet or they wanted to send a press release, you all galvanized troops. And what was special about your troops it is, and it's still special, is that you're able to bring together so many different kinds of people while keeping the message very clear. Black people matter, period. However, you all understand and you underscore the importance of allyship. You understand the importance of, y'all, we can't do it by ourselves. All right. And we're going to need help, but we're going to drive this bus and we're going to let people know policy wise, advocacy wise, organizing wise, this is how we are to do this in a very respectful way. And thank you. I know people thank y'all, but I wanted to use my time to thank you for your work, your leadership, and quite frankly, your mentorship from afar. We may not be able to come to your house and sit with you and ask you, how do you dot that I and cross that T? But just watching you, you're so consistent and committed to this work. Thank you. And so as we continue to talk a little bit about equity, the importance of justice, and the importance of understanding housing as what I'm calling a social justice issue, for me, I really just encourage my committee to either get on or get out of my way. Because at the end of the day, there are, and then I'll get back to your direct question, but there are two sort of schools of thoughts here on addressing housing in the state of Connecticut. I think it's important to know that the state of Connecticut is the most segregated housing state in the country. Let that sit a little bit, okay? There is one school of thought that says, you know what? In order to address the lack of affordable housing in many of our suburban neighborhoods, let's just move as many Black and brown or poor people, because there are poor white folks as well. Let's just move them out of their situation, wherever their residence might be currently, and move them to a more vibrant community. And we've checked off that box. All is well. Okay, that's that. Then there's this other side, this school of thought that I've closely aligned myself with. And y'all heard me 2 years ago when I ran for mayor, and even 8.5 years ago when I ran the first time for state rep, in that you cannot overlook the long-term resident that's saying, look, all I want is a grocery store. All I want you to do is address the slumlord that comes in from New York, buys up the property, takes all of my Section 8 money because I got to pay on time, and never, ever create a safe and quality space for my children. You all have read the articles, back-to-back articles on, slum landlords, the conditions of our people. Some of our animals wouldn't even live in the conditions that our people are or have been subjected to. Mice, all kinds of rodents, you name it, and it's bad. And we talk about, and that's a great segue into the second half of this, when we talk about our health crisis or racism as a health emergency. But there is no way that we're only going to just pick up everybody from, and I'll just say Hartford, and move them out to Canton or Avon. However, I've matured a little bit, y'all. And I believe the two can coexist. It can't be one without the other. And so if my suburban friends, which I've had many conversations with them, are interested in really creating opportunities for people of color, indigenous people in their communities, fine, so be it. All I'm saying to the state of Connecticut is we've got to figure out how to reinvest in areas that have been overlooked, underinvested for far too long. Okay, so I'm done on my little soapbox. That's that.
Well, I wanted to just say, with that we need to pay attention to racism as we, include them both. Because if you take Black families out into these white communities that have no interest in making room for Black people, and there they are, harassed, intimidated, treated like dirt, it's just no good for them. The school systems that they're now in wasn't set up for them, and just because they're there, that doesn't mean it changes. So you still have to deal with the big R, or the white supremacy racism. You have to deal with it coming or going. I mean, are you sending them to communities where there's public transportation? Can they get back and forth to work? I mean, what's happening with that? I mean, and you are taking money from the urban centers and putting them out in places where, they have money. We need that money. And a lot of times we want to stay in our community. We do want, just like you said, we just want, healthy food. We want a quality, education for our children. We want to be with our people. We don't mind being with other people, but we don't want to have to take our whole lives and, uproot it and go to somewhere else to live equitably. How can you say that?
Equitably.
Equitably.
How about that?
Because I have a hard time saying. I'm gonna try it. Let me see. Pistachios. See, I gotta say it real slow.
Right.
So my wife is always saying, "Just don't say it." I'm like, "Well, what is that?"
Sometimes you just gotta say it.
That's right.
I mean, we're human, right? So this is okay, right? The human aspect of us needs to be considered in housing too.
Right.
Is my saying. And Black people, Black and brown people are people. They're not just folk. There's a population that you can set here or set there, and then you're cool. That's my point.
No, I think you bring up when you talk about equity, you bring up some really valid points, and I think sometimes we talk a little too fast and really don't slow down to actually understand the levels of divestment in many of these communities. It's sickening. And now all of a sudden, there's this talk about riverfront. Let's invest. And don't get me wrong, because I believe millions are listening to this show. And I don't want my dear friend, Congressman John Larson, to think that I am anti-redevelopment of our riverfront. As a matter of fact, I'm so excited that riverfront recapture is a part of my district. All right. And the state has funded them upwards of a couple $1 million, if not more, and even on the federal level, to help reimagine what the riverfront will look like. Connecticut, we're a little behind the times because y'all can go to North Carolina, y'all can go to anywhere else, and the riverfront, it looks beautiful. Okay, fine. However, you can't tell me you're putting all this money into a riverfront and you scurry on around to North Main Street or you go on around the Garden Street and it still looks the same. That's crazy. That's crazy. And so as a chairman, the benefits that I have is really reframing the conversation. Again, I don't know everything, but I want to make sure that I am inserting myself. I am at the table. I'm hearing all sides, but I'm also very keen on policy has power. Don't ever let nobody tell you that. And so if we could really institute and statute how we are going to re-envision, reimagine, reallocate funds into communities like Hartford, our communities, our neighborhoods, it starts with policy, but it also starts with a will to just want to do right.
And this is where we are.
Yeah.
I mean, for real, right is right and wrong is wrong. And listen, I'm gonna be a preacher for a few seconds. You have no need of a teacher. Right is right and wrong is wrong. And we all know that. We all have a sense of that. What I am ultimately concerned about is how fairness gets legislated, how policy become law, and then those laws are practiced in community. Mm-hmm. That there is a trajectory there. And what often we miss is so say we get together and we create a way to be a policy. Mm-hmm. Then we say we need laws that come around that policy, that thinking, all right, to ensure both it's funded and there is some oversight. Somebody's paying attention to it for over the time, making sure it's tweaked and nurtured and overseen, if you will. All right. Then the laws then create policies and then practices are developed. So then we find out, okay, we thought early on this was going to work out like this, but now we see we need another piece of law that fixes, that's the fix for the thing we thought we understood via the policy conversation. So it is that kind of thing. And I think we allow far too many people we leave far too many people out of that process. Yes. Right? Mm-hmm. Policy, lawmaking, practice. Mm-hmm. We leave far too many people out of it. That leads us into what you've been engaged in. And I want to spend the last 10 minutes of our time, 30 minutes, we promised 30 minutes, talking about racism as a public health crisis. You hit at it a little bit, but could you tell us what's going on? Give us the latest, straight from the horse's mouth. You and others are not horse, straight from the representative's mouth. How about that? But
you're a whole human being.
My wife is helping me over here. Anyway, tell us what's going down and how we can help.
Thank you. Man, I wish we had like an hour, because I really want to talk about, and I jotted it down, the process, the policy, and sort of the lawmaking piece that you just described. So maybe y'all invite me back and we can talk about that. But I'm really going to talk a little bit about the sausage making process within sort of this development of declaring racism as a public health crisis. Prompted by, I think, wide racial health disparities during the ongoing pandemic, and even before that. Myself, there were others. I can't say that I did this all by myself. This was grassroots at its best. Okay. I know Lady Pamela was out there and others fighting the good fight around encouraging and educating and providing awareness for many of our municipalities around racism, but connecting that word, the big R word, to health disparities. We know that last year, and even before the vaccine, folks were concerned about having access to just simply getting tested for COVID. And we can talk about those horror stories, which really shed light on the disparities within the health system right here in the state of Connecticut. Fast forward, I said to myself, I am so excited. So many municipalities joined in, they signed, they put in their ordinances on the local level. Yes, we declared it, and that's bad. Y'all shouldn't be racist, and we should provide more opportunity. Okay, that's good, and I'm excited about that. But I wanted to take it a step further. And currently what we have before the General Assembly is what we're calling declaring racism as a public health crisis bill. All right. House Bill number 6662. Thank the both of you again, Lady Pamela and Bishop. You came out during the Appropriations Committee meeting and y'all spoke in favor. There were so many Black and Brown and our allies speaking up on the importance of the Appropriations Committee to fund this type of work. Well, what is this work? And then I'll back into sort of where we are and how you all and your fellowship could be helpful. This particular bill would essentially establish a new commission on racial equity in public health. Okay. And the ultimate goal is to develop and periodically update a comprehensive strategic plan to eliminate health disparities and inequities across all sectors within the state of Connecticut government, including, all right, air and water quality, natural resources, agricultural land, affordable housing, infrastructure, obviously public health, access to quality health care, social service, education, just to name a few. Some people are saying, well, how is all of this going to work? And here is the honest to God truth. I don't even know yet. But what I do know is that the Appropriations Committee has funded this particular work upwards of maybe $350,000 in funding All right. That'll include salary, fringe benefits for a new executive director and two executive persons that would help to liaison with our community advisory group. All right. That will be able to kind of speak the truth to power. You all are our eyes and ears on the ground. There's no way that we can talk about addressing racism without having the people who are disproportionately impacted by it not at the table. Robin Porter always says this, and I always use it. She says, if you are not at the table, you are on the menu. And so it was extremely important that not only do we establish a commission to focus solely on this equity work, we wanted to be sure that the community, the very community that helped to create this model, this piece of legislation, will always be a part, or rather be at the table. And so within the bill, we literally called out organizations that would make up this particular advisory committee. I do know notable among them, Dr. Takesha Everett, the CEO, president, or executive director at Health Equity Solutions. And then you also have, and it's a long name, it's the Commission on Women's, Children, Family, Seniors. Y'all know what I'm talking about, that commission. Equity and Opportunity will also be on that committee. But what's so important about this is you're going to have the legislative branch and the executive branch working together through their commissioners to really figure out, number one, how are they, meaning the commissions, will meet the benchmarks that we have outlined in the bill. What are those benchmarks? For example, we know within the Education Committee, we want our schools to be funded equitably. All right. Our education cost sharing formula needs to include equity. Well, we moved the needle a little bit this year by funding, or rather addressing the ELL weights as well as the poverty weights, but that's moving the needle a little bit. This commission could work alongside the Commissioner of Education to really help come up with some ideas on how do we in the state of Connecticut fund some of our most poorest districts and get our children reading at grade level well before they're at third grade. I don't have the right statistic, but can y'all believe we have young people that are graduating from our high schools and they can't read? We have fifth graders who are unable to read. That's an equity issue. That's an issue. And we have to do better. And so while we're flying this airplane and we're building it at the same time, one thing's for sure. We have a group of committed people that will help to launch this inaugural commission on equity and really move Connecticut forward. The bill passed through the House of Representatives last week. It is now in the Senate. Within the walls of the General Assembly, there's a lot of negotiating. There's a lot of back and forth. As you can imagine, there are also people who really don't care about equity, don't care about the fact, that Connecticut has some really, really racist practices that impact Black and brown and indigenous people. And so we have to prepare ourselves as members of the General Assembly in favor of this type of legislation to be ready to fight and debate as long as we need to debate to get this bill passed. And so while House Bill 6662 is still very much alive, on the back end, we've merged. I say we because I'm working in partnership with Senator Saud Anwar, who is the Senate chair of our Public Health Committee, and others to include my portion of the bill within Senate Bill 1. Okay. And Senate Bill 1 does some other things which I support, but I wanted to make sure that the community voice is heard, that we're going well beyond just declaring racism as a public health, but we're doing something about it. And we're also funding this work as well. Lastly,
we're already at time.
Okay, let me just say this last thing.
Can you give us a part two?
I can. Can I just say this last thing?
Yes.
No. Okay, this last piece in the bill will include a racial inclusion and equity person who will work on all policies to ensure that equity is embedded in any policy that we put forward. So I'm so excited about those positions as well. So anyway, sorry I talked too much, but
that's okay. We need to hear all of what you have to say. You are center to helping to communicate. It's interesting enough, and we can talk ad nauseum. Let's do a part two, because
absolutely
many of your colleagues are not willing to do, and quite frankly, they are not as gifted. I'll just say that right there in explaining what they're doing. And we need both. We need you to do what you do, but also turn around and speak to the folk that you represent. And so why don't we do a part two, folks? We're going to come back again. Rep McGee said he's going to talk to us some more. We're going to come back for a part two. Yeah, we'll see y'all in a bit. All right. Peace.